What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews, and I'm here once again to give you the most comprehensive NBA player prop preview you are going to see. I'll be sharing my screen. I'll take you through outline. We'll go through all the key players, all the key matchups. We'll talk about their form. I'll tell you what I like, and I'll tell you what I don't. And I do all this to give you all the information that you need to make sure you hit some bangers on your NBA player props. Worked for us yesterday. Almost 8 units profit in the books. Cash that. Our BAP landed, our BAP, which is for badass parlays or your bitch ass parlays. It doesn't matter what you want to call it. The fact of the matter is that we cashed. It was sweat free, very easy, plus 493 odds, and we're going to keep it rolling today. Now, I was feeling myself after such a great day, so I had to wear. I was starting to feel like the GOAT. Now, I'm not the GOAT at all. Sometimes I question whether I'm even good at this, but I'm feeling like it. So I'm repping MJ today. I've had this for quite some time and it's never been worn. This is the first time I put this authentic Bulls jersey on, so I'm really feeling it. Let's take this good luck. Let's roll into the preview. Check the pinned comments, and that's where you see my final bets. Let's go. So we're kicking things off with the Washington Wizards versus Sacramento Kings. Denny Advia, Rashawn Holmes, game time decisions in this one. The Wizards, full tank mode. Most people depleted, but Kyle Kuzma seems to be back after missing the last game. So let's get into it. We'll start with Kyle Kuzma. His points prop, 22.5 in this game. He's got a good matchup here against the Kings. He's covered in 8 out of his last 10, and he's covered in 3 consecutive games already. I hate to say it, the first pick I looked at, I like it. So that's going to go to the short list. As you know, I take a short list of all the different players and the props that I like. I upload the video and edit and all that type of shit, get it out to you. Once that's uploaded, I start diving deeper. Then I start picking what I like. So for those of you who are watching, don't put comments in where are the picks. If you put the comment in where are the picks, it means I'm still working on them. So just be patient. Pick should be up an hour or two after the video is uploaded. Let's check out what else we got for Kyle Kuzma. His assist prop, 4.5. He's covered in 3 out of his last 10. He's got a good matchup here against the Kings, but he's only hit in 1 of his last 3. His rebound line's at 7.5. He's covered this in 4 out of his last 10, 2 out of his last 3 against the Kings. So, yeah, I'm really feeling that points prop out of them all. So, we'll stick with that. Jordan Poole. Let's have a look at Jordan Poole back in the starting lineup. Now, his line's at 17.5. He's covered this in 4 out of his last 10. The matchup's not the best against the Kings, but he did score 28 points the last time they played each other. Turning to his assists, that line's at 5.5. He's covered in 3 of his last 10. 2 assists against the Kings last time, and his rebound props at 2.5. 6 out of his last 10 games and had no rebounds against the Kings. So he is in the starting lineup, but regardless if he's on the bench or in the starting lineup, he's inconsistent as hell. Jumping into the key plays for the Kings, we'll start with Domantas Sabonis. He's got a great matchup here. Points, lines at 21.5. He's covered in 4 of his last 10. He has covered in 2 out of his last 3 against the Wizards. Looking at his rebound numbers, 14.5. 8 out of his last 10. His line against the Raptors was like 15.5, I think, 14.5 perhaps. Covered it anyway with 17 rebounds. Has an excellent matchup here. So it seems like a very obvious choice, but he has gone under in his last 2 games against the Washington Wizards. These games have been very high scoring, potentially less rebounds available. Let's quickly check his rebound chances. 24 and 17 and 23 in his last 3 games. Looking at his last 10, yeah, he's getting close to 30 rebound chances per game at the moment. In those head-to-head matchups, rebound chances much lower than what he's getting at the moment. But yeah, definitely lean to the over there on Domantas Sabonis. Looking at his assist prop, that's at 8.5. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. Got a triple-double against the Raptors. He's also had 3 consecutive games against the Wizards, getting 10 or more assists, which is absolutely crazy. So Sabonis, once again, his lines are high. I don't hate him. I just don't like taking such high lines. Maybe his rebounds plus assists could be a good play. Let's check that out real quick. 23.5 rebounds plus assists. He's hit this in 5 out of his last 10 and 2 out of his last 3 against Wizards. So it's really the rebound part which is letting us down when you're looking at previous form. So, yeah, on a back-to-back, I'm not overconfident. De'Aaron Fox, his points line, 25.5. Pretty decent matchup here, but he's gone under in 4 straight. He has covered in 2 out of his last 3 against the Wizards. His assist numbers, 6.5, 5 out of his last 10. Oh, check that out. He went under in his assists. Remember I told you that 5.5 assist line against the Raptors looks too good to be true. Everything was pointing to the over, and he went under. How crazy is that? But yeah, 5 out of his last 10. He's covered in 1 out of his last 3 against the Wizards. So I'm not loving the assist prop there. And his rebound numbers 4 out of 4.5, 6 out of his last 10, 2 out of his last 3 against the Wizards. So yeah, I'm not really loving anything within that game. Kyle Kuzma points and probably something to do with Sabonis is what I'm thinking at the moment. Jumping into the Pelicans versus the Orlando Magic. Everyone seems available to play in this one, so let's get into capping. Start with Banchero. His points prop 21.5. Tough matchup here against the Pels. 6 out of his last 10. Scored 29 points the last time they played. Covered in 1 of his last 2. His assists 5.5. 4 out of his last 10. He's gone under in 2 consecutive games against the Pels, so that is a tough matchup. And his rebound 6.5. 4 out of his last 10. 1 out of his last 2 against the Pels. I'm personally got a gut feeling he goes under in assists. What are the odds for that? Plus 100 for him to go under 5.5 assists. That's cash in 6 out of his last 10, 58% of the year, and it's cash in his last 2 games against the Pelicans. So let me take note of that one. I'll get back to that one a little bit later. Who else do we like? Wendell Carter Jr. He's been playing quite well as of late. Points prop 11.5, 5 out of his last 10. Matchup's not too bad, to be honest, but he's got under in his last 2 against the Pels. His rebound numbers, line's at 7.5. He's covered in 7 out of his last 10. Does have a good matchup here, and he's rebounded very well against the Pelicans. So that's what I was looking for. Let me take Wendell's number down. All right, what else have we got? We got Franz. Now, Franz, fuck. Look at him every single time, and I never take the bet because his numbers are all over the place. He's got a tough matchup here against the Magic. He's covered in 3 out of his last 10 games. And in head-to-head matchups, 1 out of his last 2. His assist line, 3.5. 4 out of his last 10. 1 out of his last 2 against the Pels. And then rebounds, 4.5. 5 out of his last 10. He has rebound above this line in both games against the Pelicans. But still, nothing about Franz leaves me with any confidence. Let's have a look into these Pelicans. Now, Zion's been playing much better as of late. He's now cashed this line in 5 consecutive games. Does have a difficult matchup here. The Magic allow the fewest points to power forwards on the season. So Zion has covered in 5 straight. He's yet to verse the Orlando Magic, so interested to see how this one goes. Assist-wise, 4.5. He's only covered in 3 of his last 10, and his rebound numbers at 5.5. He's gone over in 7 consecutive games now, which is pretty wild. But it's minus 140. So I'm not overly excited by the Zion prop. Honestly, when I looked at the slate and I saw this game, I was like, both of these teams are very good defensively. So if I was going to take in this bet, most likely it would be an under. But let's check out Brandon Ingram. So difficult matchup. I think everyone has a difficult matchup here except for Wendell Carter Jr. Line's at 18.5. Covered in 5 out of his last 10. Did score 25 points the last time he versed the Magic. Line's at 5.5 for his assists. 5 out of his last 10. Only had 5 assists against them. And his rebound line at 4.5. Had 6 rebounds against the Magic last time. And has covered this in 8 out of his last 10 games. For that, minus 135 though. So I'm not super keen on that. But I'm going to take note of that. I'll research it a little bit further. And if I can find better odds at minus 135, might be something that I look to take. And let's have a look at CJ McCollum. His points line at 16.5. He's covered in 3 of his last 10 and his last 2 against the Magic. His assist line's at 3.5. He has covered that in 3 straight now. 4 of his last 10. Easily covered in his last 2 games against the Magic. And his rebound line, 3.5. 6 out of his last 10. 1 out of his last 2 against the Magic. So I'm not overly excited about this. CJ McCollum this year is clearly taking a dip. I don't know if it's age, injuries, or just the fact that he's the third option in this team. So if you look at past history against certain teams, none of that really gets me excited about CJ. He's not playing at the same rate. He doesn't have the same usage rate, so I wouldn't count on that. Let's have a look at the Brooklyn Nets versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Had a bit of success on that last game. We backed Damian Lillard. I told you, bet on him now, because if Giannis is out, that line's going to skyrocket. And we got on, line skyrocketed. The bet cashed very easily. So I was pretty happy with that and also got it at great odds. But Giannis, game time decision once again, or I think he's out actually. Well, one of the two. Most likely he's out. And Nick Claxton is a game time decision as well. But limited markets available at the moment. No Dame Lillard prop available here on Outlier. I'm just going to quickly check my sportsbook to see if I happen to see any props for Dame, because if we do, we might run back that same strategy. And I've got nothing. Props for Giannis, yes, nothing for Dame. So let's have a look at Giannis. I'm pretty sure it's a hamstring, right? Left hamstring. It is a left hamstring. Just want to see if I can get some news on this. All right, well, if Giannis is out, I'm not going to waste my time going through his prop. So let's check out the key ones for the Brooklyn Nets. So I'll start with Mikal Bridges. So a lot of you guys commented around the Tobias Harris thing, just not to show him anymore. This is the player I want to know about now. Mikal Bridges, because I never bet on this guy and I never will. Is his props worth showing? Let me know in the comment section below. Points props at 17.5, 3 out of his last 10, 2 out of his last 4 against the Bucks. The matchup is a somewhat difficult one, so I'd lean to the under, but 17.5. It's a pretty sharp line. His assists is at 3.5. He's covered in 7 out of his last 10, 2 out of his last 4 against the Milwaukee Bucks. And his rebound props at 4.5. 6 out of his last 10 games, 1 out of his last 4 against the Bucks. Cam Thomas, best scorer here on the Brooklyn Nets, lines at 21.5. He's covered this in 5 out of his last 6 games. He's got a good matchup here against Milwaukee, who are on a back-to-back. In head-to-head matchups, yeah, he's covered in 1 out of 6. One of those games, he scored 45 points. It was the only game where he played probably close to the minutes he's getting now, so his minutes have been all over the place. So that head-to-head stuff doesn't bother me. He looks like he's getting between 32 and 35 minutes a night at the moment. So I don't mind this bet for Cam Thomas, to be honest. So I'll take note of that, look into it a little bit further. What else have we got? We'll check his assist prop now. Lines at 3.5. 5 out of his last 10. Hasn't covered that against them. His rebound prop 4.5. 4 out of his last 10. 1 out of his last 6. So nothing too sexy going on over there. Check out Dennis Schroeder. Points prop 14.5. He's got a good matchup here against the Bucks. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. So for Dennis Schroeder, I wouldn't take his points prop, but I think I've said it a few times now. Taking him for 10 points, a great addition to the BAP, I think. That's a real bitch-ass play there to reduce Dennis Schroeder's line. So taking him for 10, I'd feel pretty confident in that. And then his assists. The matchup's somewhat difficult to get assists. 7 out of his last 10 games. Since Cam Thomas came back, we've seen Dennis Schroeder's assist numbers decline. So I wouldn't be looking at his assist prop. Jumping to the next game, it's the Chi-Town Chicago Bulls versus the Houston Rockets. Let's check this game out. For the Chicago Bulls, Kobe White, Alex Caruso, game time decisions in this game. Houston fielding the same team they have been since Şengün went out injured. So we'll start with the Houston Rockets. We'll go with Fred VanVleet. Now, I already know that the Bulls are a tough matchup to score on. So Fred's got a difficult matchup. Lines at 16.5. He's covered in 7 out of his last 10. He did score 20 points the last time they played, though. When we look at assists, the matchup's not too bad here. Now, Fred's been an assist gold as of late, especially with no Şengün. His line's at 8.5. He's covered this in 7 out of his last 10 games. Positive EV play here. I don't mind this. I did bet on Fred not too long ago, and he delivered for us. So I'll look into Fred VanVleet a little bit more later on. In terms of the head-to-head matchup, he had 10 assists the last time he played the Chicago Bulls. So I'm not hating that. Rebound-wise, lines at 3.5, 7 out of his last 10, and he also had 6 rebounds the last time they played. A difficult matchup. The Bulls allow the third fewest rebounds to point guards, but, Fred's been getting busy on the rebounding end too. So points plus, rebounds plus assists for Fred perhaps. We'll see where I end up. Jalen Green. Now, since Şengün's been out for Jalen Green, he's been scoring a lot more and he's been rebounding heaps more. So we'll see if we can find any juice in there. Points prop, 24.5, 6 out of his last 10. He's gone under in 3 consecutive games against the Bulls. The matchup's not too bad. I wouldn't bother looking at his assist prop because he doesn't get many of those, but checking out his rebounds, check that out. 4 consecutive games, he's covered this. 5.5. His rebound prop I took him against Washington was 6.5. So it's gone down, somewhat juiced. If you looked at the 6.5, you're getting plus 115. So 5 out of his last 10, 4 consecutive games, and he has covered in 2 out of his last 3 against the Bulls. The matchup is not too bad, but yeah, I'm not getting the same vibes, to be honest. He probably has another monster rebounding game. I'm just not really feeling it, I must tell you. Who else is there? Let's have a look at Jabari Smith Jr. His points props at 15.5. Matchup, I think Jabari Smith Jr. plays a lot more center when Şengün's out of the lineup, so That matchup for center is somewhat difficult, but he's covered this in 4 out of his last 10, 2 out of his last 3 against the Bulls. His rebound prop is at 8.5, 5 out of his last 10, 2 out of his last 3 against the Chicago Bulls. But in those games, he would have been playing the 4, and the Bulls allow a lot of rebounds to power forwards. So I'd tread lightly if you're looking at Jabari Smith plays. Eamon Thompson. So I just want to look at his rebound prop, really. I wouldn't trust this guy to score some points, but rebounding wise, I can see it happening. He's lining up at the 3, Dylan Brooks at the 4. I'm not too worried about that because he's clearly got great rebounding potential, especially with no Şengün. He's been getting busy, but his line's at 8.5, so I'm not too confident in taking that. But he should have a decent rebounding game, in my opinion. Having a look at the Bulls, though. Let's look at DeMar DeRozan. Points prop 23.5. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10, 2 out of his last 3 against the Rockets. His assist numbers, 4.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10, 2 out of his last 3 against the Rockets. Rebound number, 4.5 as well. 6 out of his last 10 games, 2 out of his last 3 against the Rockets. So I'm not getting a strong vibe out of DeMar DeRozan there. Let's have a look at Nikola Vucevic, 19.5. He's covered this in 5 out of his last 10 games. Head-to-head matchups, he's gone under in 3 consecutive games against the Rockets. Having a look at his boards, it's 11.5, 4 out of his last 10 games. Had 2 great rebounding games the last 2 games against the Rockets, but my nuts, they ain't tingling right now. So Fred VanVleet, probably the play that I like the most so far looking through that game, but I'll double-check everything before I make my final picks, don't you worry. The next game is the Jazz versus the Dallas Mavericks. So in this game, Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson are game time decisions in this one. So believe it or not, we've got more props for the Mavericks. Thank God, because Luka's been game time decision for ages. So let's check out Luka first. His points prop, 34.5. He's covered in 6 out of his last 10. The matchup's not too bad, but he's only covered this in 1 of 4 games against the Jazz. His assist prop's at 10.5. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10, 3 out of his last 4, and he's got a great matchup here against the Jazz. The Jazz do allow a lot of assists to point guards, so Luka Doncic, you're on the list, my man. Looking at his rebound prop, 9.5. He's covered this in 9 out of his last 10 games, and this is a good matchup as well. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered in 2 out of his last 4. So Luka been rebounding very well as of late, so if you like recent form, you're going to like Luka's rebounding prop. Let me tell you, Kyrie Irving. His points prop, 25.5. Matchup to score points is somewhat difficult. He's covered this in 3 of his last 10, 2 out of his last 3 against the Jazz. His assist numbers at 4.5. He has covered in 4 out of his last 10. This last game against the Spurs, when he fell on 3, that's the game that cost us our badass parlay. It was the last leg, and we got cooked. But looking at head-to-head form, he's gone under in his last 2 games against the Utah Jazz. His rebound numbers at 4.5. He's covered in 5 of his last 10, 2 of his last 3 against Utah. So no Kyrie props really standing out to me. But let's see if Daniel Gafford can get busy for us. So his points prop, 10.5. Hasn't moved. Covered in 6 out of his last 10 games. The matchup against Utah is not a bad one either. And Gafford yet to verse the Utah Jazz. Rebound-wise, that line's at 7.5. It's plus money. He's covered in 3 out of his last 10. Has covered 6+ rebounds in 8 consecutive games, though. But he does have a difficult matchup. The Jazz, a pretty good rebounding team. So in this particular game, Lauri Markkanen, his numbers are going to be all over the place. He keeps his in and out of the lineup. I would not bet Lauri Markkanen right now. I'm not saying ever, but right now, I don't think that's worth really looking into. So Luka assists, probably the bet I like the most from that game. So I'll research that. Now we're heading into the New York Knicks versus the Denver Nuggets. In this game, no game time decisions, which is good. In terms of key matches that are still out, OG, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, all out for the New York Knicks. Denver, 9-point favorites here. So let's cap this shit up. Jalen Brunson, let's start here. The Knicks are on the road in Colorado, so difficult road trip. Brunson, his line's at 28.5, has had 3 excellent games, scoring 45, 42, and 34. The matchup's tough. He's gone under in 3 consecutive games against the Denver Nuggets. Assist-wise, line's at 5.5, 5 out of his last 10 games, and only one of his last 3 against the Nuggets. And his rebound line's at 3.5. He's covered in 4 of his last 10. The matchup's not too bad, but he's only covered in 1 of 3 against them. So out of all his props, I probably lean to the over on his points prop purely because who else is going to score these points? You can't depend on McBride to get you buckets every single night. So, yeah, I don't mind that for Jalen Brunson. We're looking at Josh Hart now. Now, Josh Hart's been putting up some amazing statistical games, and I can't seem to win on him. I think I've lost my last 2 or 3 bets on Josh Hart, and it's usually because I've added in points, and he's been fucking screwing me. 6 out of his last 10, he's covered 11.5. He does have a tough matchup here, and he's covered in 1 of last 2 against Denver. His assist numbers at 4.5. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10, 1 out of his last 2 against Denver. His rebound line, it's at 10.5 now. It's pretty crazy, but he played 48 minutes the other night. So 7 out of his last 10 games, he's covered this. He does have a difficult matchup. So, yeah, I'm not feeling it. I'm not man enough to take Josh Hart again. Who else do we have? Dante DiVincenzo. He's been going under quite a lot, to be honest. Yeah, he's gone under in 6 of his last 10 games. Tough matchup here against the Nuggets. Scored 16 points last time they played. Isaiah Hartenstein, his rebound prop could be interesting, actually. He's been doing a bit better on the rebound side of the ball. So his rebound line's at 8.5. Somewhat difficult matchup. He's covered in 3 consecutive games. Against Jokic and the Nuggets, he's covered in 1 out of his last 2. So, yeah, I'm not really loving any of the Knicks players there. Let's have a look at the Denver Nuggets. Jamal Murray. Tough matchup here against the Knicks. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10, 2 out of his last 3 against New York. Assists, lines at 6.5. He's been doing very well here. 8 out of his last 10 games. Matchup, somewhat difficult. Did record 7 assists the last time he played, but this is also at minus 145. So I wouldn't take it at 7.5, that's for sure, where you get better odds. But the 6.5 looks good. But for these odds, I'm not really feeling it. Rebound line, 4.5, 5 out of his last 10 games, 1 out of 3 against the Knicks. Who else have we got? Aaron Gordon. Points lines at 13.5, 6 out of his last 10, 1 out of his last 2 against the Knicks. And his rebound lines at 6.5. He's covered in 6 out of his last 10 and gone under in 2 straight games against the Knicks. Let's check out MPJ. Give me something good. His line's at 16.5. He's got a good matchup here. He's covered in 8 out of his last 10 games, which is cool, but struggled against the Knicks. 3 consecutive games going under. So, yeah, his recent form is great. These games against the Knicks, what was happening? Played 26 minutes. Well, that was a 40-point blowout, so that's fair enough. This was a 6-point win to the New York Knicks, where he played 30 minutes. He only attempted 10 shots, so his shot volume is down. Looking at his last 10 games, he's attempting 14 shots a night. So, yeah, MPJ might be something I can fuck around with. It is a home game after all, but I'll dive a little bit deeper into that. But MPJ, I don't hate that, my friend. His rebounds, 6.5. He's covered this in 7 out of his last 10. He also went under in 3 straight games against the Knicks, but he does have a good matchup here. In these 3 games against the Knicks, he averaged 9 rebound chances. Over his last 10 games, he's averaging 9.9 rebound chances. So, yeah, I'm not loving the rebound chance side of things, but his points prop might be something I could fuck around with. Nikola Jokic, tough matchup. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10, 1 out of his last 2 against the Knicks. Assists, lines at 7.5. He's covered in only 3 of his last 10. Last 4 games, considerably under. Difficult matchup here. Only had 3 assists the last time he versed the Knicks, but that was a 40-point blowout. So I wonder what's happening with his potential assists. They seem down. Well, we did see on Murray's assist graph that his assist numbers are much higher. Jokic, 7.5. Even if you take a minus 7.5, you're getting pretty good odds. Plus 114. The Knicks do allow the fewest assists to centers on the season. In head-to-head matchups, he did have 8 assists in this game, but he had 15 potential assists. In his last 10, against Dallas, he had 17 potential assists, only connected on 7. So, yeah, I would lean to the under here for Nikola Jokic assists, but it feels like a very brave play. Looking at his rebounds, though, that line's at 12.5. Tough matchup. 4 of his last 10. Has gone under in 2 straight against the New York Knicks. He's averaging 20 rebound chances in his last 10. Only averaged 15.5 in his games against the Knicks, but played less minutes in his most recent matchup. So that's a difficult one. When the previous game's a blowout, it's really hard to predict what happens in the next one based on previous form. So in this particular game, I'd probably say MPJ has got my interest. And then the last game is the Atlanta Hawks versus the Phoenix Suns. Who we got? DeAndre Hunter, I think, is a game time decision in this game. Wes Matthews and some other chumps. Josh Okogie is a game time decision for the Phoenix Suns. So let's have a look at these Atlanta Hawks first, starting with DeJounte Murray. His points prop, 24.5. Does have a good matchup here against the Phoenix Suns. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. Has gone under in 3 consecutive games against the Phoenix Suns. But if Trae Young was involved in this game, DeJounte Murray probably didn't have too much opportunity. So the volume's probably going to be there. Shot percentage has not been. But look, if the volume's there, we're just going to figure out, is there a way to crunch some numbers, find something I like. So take note of his points prop. Looking at his assist prop, 6 out of his last 10, 3 consecutive games now. It does have a good matchup. Hasn't hit this line against them, but obviously the Trae Young factor. But 8.5 feels very sharp. So yeah, it's only averaging 15.2 potential assists. Yeah, I'm not loving it. Not loving it at all. But his points prop, I don't mind it. Rebound-wise, that line's at 5.5. 5 out of his last 10. Has covered in 3 consecutive games against the Phoenix Suns, though. What else have we got here? Let's check Clint Capella. So his points prop's at 11.5. He's covered in 5 of his last 10. Tough matchup against Nurkic. He's gone under in 3 straight against the Phoenix Suns. And his rebound prop's at 10.5. It's plus money. 5 out of his last 10 games. And he's covered in 1 of 3 against Phoenix. The 2 games he went under, he did get 10, though. 10 boards. So just having a look at this. Tough matchup. But 8 boards. He's hit 3 straight games against Phoenix. He's hit that in 9 consecutive games. 8 rebounds. Phoenix, I think they're on a back-to-back, but they're still minus 10-point favorite. So this could be a blowout here. So yeah, I've talked myself out of that one. So have a look at Devin Booker. So his points line's at 25.5. Only 3 of his last 10, gone under in 4 straight. Scored 24 points against Atlanta last time they played. His assist line's at 6.5. 6 out of his last 10 games. Had 4 assists last time against the Hawks. His rebound line's at 4.5. 7 out of his last 10 games. Head-to-head matchups, he did have 6 the last time they played. So yeah, I think Booker's definitely going to smash one of his props. I just can't tell which one it's going to be. I don't like betting on the Suns too much. I guess there's just too many good players involved, and any of them could pop off at any time. So let's have a look at Brad Beal. 6 out of his last 10, lines at 17.5. He only scored 3 points against Philly. Shot 1 for 6. My goodness. Luckily, we didn't hit our main bet on Bradley Beal, but him to get 4 assists as part of the BAP, absolutely cash for us. Check out these assist numbers. His line's at 4.5. He's now cashed in 7 out of his last 10. 4 consecutive games with 7+ assists. And he had 10 assists the last time he played the Atlanta Hawks. So Bradley Beal assists at 4.5, minus 145. It's not great, but I have a look at the odds to potentially take him for 4 assists again as part of the badass parlay. But let's check it. I'll check that out a little bit later. And his rebound numbers, 4.5 as well. Plus money, 4 out of his last 10, but only had 4 rebounds the last time he played them. Kevin Durant, his points prop, 24.5. Good matchup here, but he's gone under in 4 straight. I considered fading him, but I bitched it. Scored 35 points against the Hawks last time. His assist number, 4.5. 4 out of his last 10 games. 8 assists last time against Atlanta. And his rebound prop, 6.5. He did cover it. I think I lent to the over. I almost took that as a single bet, but bitched it. 7 out of his last 10. And he had 8 rebounds last time against Atlanta. So, yeah, 6.5 for Kevin Durant. I don't think he's such a bad play. I'm not minding it. Not minding it at all, but I'll investigate that a bit further. Look, other than that, I'm not overly aroused by any of these other picks for tomorrow. How long have I been recording for? 30 minutes? My lord. So, look, I apologize if I may have gone too quickly on this one. It was past 10 p.m. when I started recording this. So, for me to record, edit, find the picks, upload, and all that type of shit, it's going to take me a very long time. So, this is slightly rushed, but things are cashing in, baby. I've got my GOAT jersey on, MJ. I'm feeling good about that. We got the BAPs. They're hitting there on fire. Having a very profitable week at the moment. Last 3 days have been excellent. Another BAP. I'll get more single props in there. Let me know in the comment section if you're choosing to ride with me. You know how it is. #BAP. Let's go.
Sub to the channel cause your boy's getting busy. Coming to your line from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice on the daily. It's all free, you don't even have to pay me.